Thank you so much, Josh. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so thanks again, Julian, Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it because it's the first time we have someone from RIG at this AMA in the cohort 5. I was asking Barnabé before, he couldn't make it, and a few weeks before the cohort ends, we finally get you. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And so this is AMA. The fellows will have opportunity to ask you any questions about your work or Ethereum, the current research and so on. But before we jump into that, I just wanted to get some introductions. If you can maybe tell us a bit about yourself. Maybe how did you start working on Ethereum? How did you get into the rig in the first place? What brought you here? Yeah, whoever wants to start. How should I say? Julian? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we can figure this dynamic out as we go. So maybe I can introduce RIG a bit first. So we're the Robust Consensus Group, and we research the economics of Ethereum very broadly. So it goes from, for example, economically incentivized attacks on the consensus system to the issuance that validators or consensus agents receive, to like block construction, which is what Thomas and I have been working on mainly, I'd say, which is, for example, how are blocks created with MEV boost or proposer builder separation, and how do we ensure that we achieve the goals that Ethereum has of, for example, credible neutrality, so ensuring that all transactions eventually make it on chain. So that's, I think, a bit of an introduction to the Robust Consensus Group. For me, how I got involved with Ethereum was I did my undergraduate in econometrics. I was a bit interested in crypto, and so I volunteered at DevConnect in Amsterdam. That's where I met most of the layer 1 R&D people at the layer 1 R&D day. And that's also where I met Barnabé, who's the team lead of the Robust Consensus Group. And after that, I stayed on for an internship and continued to full-time after that. So yeah, my main focus is on, I'd say, credible neutrality. So this is about how do we ensure that validators are not captured by big financial motives. So how do we ensure the validators stay decentralized, even though there's a lot of value going around in the Ethereum ecosystem? And how do we ensure that transactions do end up on chain, even if there is some centralization in certain parts of the ecosystem? Yeah, I guess that's like a very high-level introduction of my work.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Coming from DevConnect Amsterdam, that's really cool. Yeah, same way. Josh joined, by the way. That's awesome. Thomas, do you want to share your journey?
Yeah, maybe a bit just of additional info about RIG is that we also go from quite formal or like theoretical work, and we work with the academics and we write papers, but all the way to more practical, maybe protocol upgrades and data. So it's quite broad and wide, and so a different range of profiles can join RIG, because I would say we are like quite a broad team, and we rely quite a lot on each other to make progress on different fronts. And then yeah, other topics that are like worked on quite a bit are, so block construction is one, but you also have a lot of work on issuance. So the issuance policy of Ethereum, staking, MEV, all of these are like topics we like to spend our time on. And then for me, so the EF, I mean, I did a PhD in a very different domain, in computational neuroscience. That was completely outside of crypto. While I was doing my PhD, I was still interested in crypto. I had been for a while, but like just kind of on the side. And then I got involved and doing, yeah, I don't know, random work for random DAOs for a while. And the idea of when I started was like, okay, can I apply the skills I acquired during my PhD of analyzing networks, which were brain networks at the time, and try to analyze blockchain networks using kind of the same techniques. So I tried to do that, and I worked kind of around that for a while. Mostly like staying anonymous and in those. And then, after I finished my PhD, I said, okay, I don't know whether I want to keep going in academia or whether I want to just do something else and take a break. So I gave myself 1 year to do something else and see whether I would want to go back or not. Because after 1 or 2 years, it's hard to actually get back to academia because you haven't published much and stuff. So I worked I got a job at Dune Analytics, which is very much data blockchain oriented, and there I was like looking at mostly I was recruited as a data scientist, but ended up being quite data engineering stuff, looking at Spellbook, which is a GitHub repo that is public and everyone is kind of contributing and sharing their own data structure, which was nice. But then I missed research a lot because I was doing mostly like software dev, kind of data engineering stuff, which it was interesting, but I missed research. So I was like looking for like opportunities in research, and I saw some talks by Barnaby, reached out to him, we got talking. Not necessarily for a job at first, but then it led to me joining EF.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's interesting. Like I think Rig is one of the most like academic parts of EF, where you guys have a strong academic background, and so I want to ask you about
you have cryptography as well.
Yeah, of course, of course. But like it's very interesting because like also fellowship that we do here is a lot of self-learning, but some people are also working on their PhDs and so on. So my question is like, how do you see this connection of Ethereum in academia? Because of course there are papers and so on, but like I hear from a bunch of people working at universities that it's that like Ethereum kind of maybe lacks some overlap in the academic sphere, and it's also like very dynamic what's happening in Ethereum compared to like the old school academic approach. So yeah, how do you feel like comparing from your academic experience to your Ethereum experience? Yeah, if you have any thoughts, any of you.
Maybe I can start for this one. So you have different things. It's like, what is it to work at Ethereum with academics, and the difference between working for Ethereum and working in academia. Maybe so to start with the latter, it is very, very different. Academia is only focused on very deep topics. It also like depends a lot on the field. For me, in neuroscience, for example, is like you spend like 3 years writing papers, maybe 2 more years writing one paper, maybe two more years getting reviews from reviewers until you actually get to publish. Ethereum is much more fast-paced. You have ETH research, you have conference papers. All of those are like very much like kind of it's just a much faster pace, and you're also exposed to actual real world challenges a lot more. At least for me. So yeah, it's a big difference. I think if you want to work on very academic topics on Ethereum only, it's possible, but like then you are a bit disconnected to what's happening at the protocol level. Whether in academia, it's like it's free. Like you can work on like something very theoretical forever, and like no one's gonna be like, well, how does it connect to anything? So like it doesn't really matter. Like there is no requirements for this. So I don't know, pros and cons. And in terms of working at the EF in Rig with academics, I think for me it's been really cool because you get to collaborate with people from with a lot of different expertise in different backgrounds, like computer science or economics and stuff, and they're interested in blockchain. And one of the first people they contact is usually the EF because Ethereum is quite well known and it has like a quite strong research community compared to other blockchains, even like Bitcoin or like other ones. So yeah, being like the kind of first point of contact for like a lot of academics in different fields that are just interested in blockchains, I think is really cool. So yeah, for me, it's been very nice to just collaborate with a bunch of people.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. It's very interesting. Julian, you want to add anything or it's
Yeah, so for me, I would say it's very different. So I've never been in academia, so it's harder for me to speak to that. I guess for me, the decision was whether I would go into a PhD or join the EF. And my reason for joining the EF, I think, is stuff moves very quickly, and this is very interesting. You have a lot of freedom to work on problems, but these problems are very applied, and they do matter, which is very nice. I think my experience with working with academics has been very good and very interesting. So sometimes it does feel like some academics are more removed from the protocol, which makes sense, of course, because it's our daily job to look at it very closely. But then I think it can be very valuable to work together with them and to get like an outside look on how to approach certain problems from a very different area. Um, so I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. Some differences are maybe in the way that we end up with problems. So RIG does a lot of academic things where we publish papers in academic conferences, but then there's also a lot of blog posts where we build up to a more sometimes maybe even a more opinionated stance. So what should the protocol do? There's a great post from Barnaby about seeing like a protocol that addresses like what are the responsibilities of Ethereum the protocol. And I think work like this is very interesting because it has an academic stance in how it reasons from assumptions to a DAISY data maybe. But then it doesn't necessarily take an academic approach. I think it wouldn't work there. You need to have some view of what Ethereum wants to do. So yeah, I enjoy working on that as well.
nice, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very different experience, I think, from like Ethereum researcher to the developer. And we mostly had people talking about the developer experience here, so I appreciate you sharing that. And maybe like more. So you already mentioned about the rig. You gave us some overview about what the rig is working on. Maybe we can maybe zoom in a bit more about on your work. I'm curious what your current work is. You mentioned the censorship resistance, the neutrality. So yeah, can you give us some alpha on your research?
Sure. So what's nice is Julian and I work a lot work a lot together. So like different parts of the team, we all kind of like review and everything. Pretty much everything everyone publishes, I think, which is very nice. But we focus or like our interests differ in what we focus on, like most of our time. And so I've mostly been focused on inclusion lists and censorship resistance. So we've been iterating on designs that will improve the censorship resistant properties of Ethereum. And we together with other people at RIG and in DF came with a design we think is good and will work. So basically we went from like proposing different designs, kind of iterating on different approaches on more like a research level. And now like the whole past few months for me, I've been like trying to transition that towards more of implementation and specifications, trying to converge towards an EIP, like propose it to all core devs and everything. So it's been like, for me, it's been a big effort of like trying to take that research proposals kind of stage and try to move it towards like more of specs and implementation kind of phase. So that's been, I think, most of my time. And then academically, I think like around inclusion lists, you can work on like very different cool things. One thing I've been working on quite a bit is anonymous inclusion lists and how can people participate in protocols in general without revealing their identity, which I think is interesting in more generally, like and relevant for what we do. And then I don't know, trying to follow up with everything around block construction and MEV. So what is the future of PBS going to look like? Julian has, well, he will talk about it, but EPBS, he's worked on it a lot, and I've tried to follow that as well. But yeah, I would say mostly censorship resistance and a bit of work with some cool EF cryptography team members on anonymous broadcast and anonymous inclusion lists.
Yeah, Julian, if you want to add something before we jump into more questions. No need, of course.
Yeah, sure. So I worked together with Thomas on the inclusion list proposals. And so I worked a bit before on this on enshrined proposer builder separation. And this was very applied work, so trying to like iron out some details. So like what specific auction mechanism should we choose and why? And are there any issues of people not actually wanting to use proposer builder separation because maybe they're incentivized to do something differently? So I guess this is like the very applied work, and then there's like a line of some longer running, more theoretical work that's related to market microstructure. So this is about how agents in the market system interact. So, for example, I've lately been interested in setting speed technology as a protocol. So, for example, time boost on Arbitrum is a proposal how that allows people to get their transaction included faster than others. And we've been interested in how this induces different applications and what the impact of it is on the protocol. Yeah, I guess there's some long running stuff as well, some other stuff, but we can talk about that more later.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's super interesting, super important research. And thank you so much for all your work, guys. I mean, it's exciting to hear all of that. And I'm sure fellows have a ton of questions, and I've been holding them off. So feel free to raise your hand. We have Dan ready. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey guys. I've been working with Barnaby as a mentor for EPF project, which is operator delegator separation. So it's introducing delegations in protocol. And I've actually been chatting a few with Thomas on, I think, on inclusion list channel. So my question is, if we would ever have delegates enshrined in protocol, which part of the inclusion list provision or would you see bringing the most value for as a service provider, as a protocol service provider from the delegators, being EL committee, I reckon, yeah, before testers, like which role could we abstract from the current validator action set into a light validator, if ever? The EL committee, part, or the attestations? Thank you.
So thanks for your question. So how I see this is, so there could be a separation between operator and delegator, but this doesn't necessarily mean that there's also separation in duties that these operators do. So what you were referring to as, for example, light operators, this is like another separation, I would say, between the heavy and light operators. So there could be delegators for heavy operators, delegators for light operators, and light operators. And each of them, in principle, could have different tasks and duties. And this is, I guess, Barnaby's rainbow staking view, which is very interesting, although it's definitely still far out and needs a lot of research. So in my mind, also, I don't necessarily see tasks being carried over to specific participants now. For example, validators now do basically everything from proposing and testing and creating inclusion lists. And I don't like to frame it as, okay, validators now have these new rules. I think if we were to approach as big of a change as rainbow staking, it needs like a holistic reframing. So then I would just look at the separate duties that are there and see who would like create new entities that would then be assigned these tasks. So for those light operators, so these would be people who don't, for example, have a lot of hardware, don't need a lot of delegated stake. They could, for example, make the inclusion list, I think, as you were referring to. But then a tricky question is, how is the inclusion list enforced, which is, for example, via the attestations. And as part of the rainbow staking vision, as it's clear to us now, but of course this is not certain, attestations would be part of heavy operators, mostly I think because attestations would require execution, and because solo stakers now are not large enough part of the attestation set, that they indeed have like a very vital role there. So how I would see it is mainly light operators would probably make inclusion lists. They should have some way of signaling that the attesters are not doing their duties properly, which could maybe be like some certificate-based thing, as is described in rainbow staking, or maybe like facilitating a social fork if ever necessary. But I think that's very speculative, but a very cool subject.
Okay, but if they create the inclusion list, then the testers, as you said, will be heavy validators. So the light consensus could be provisioned by the light validators could actually propose the inclusion list, and APS would APS affect that?
So, sorry, or just maybe one cool thing, because we just talked about like about that with Barnaby like a few hours ago. I feel like the delegating kind of framework can also be thought of as a way to select people to fulfill certain tasks. So in an APS world, you could imagine, I don't know, IL proposals or like light validators delegating stake to select who execution proposals will be. And I think stuff like this is kind of interesting because with APS right now, we are like encountering problems in trying to figure out like mechanisms, like free market mechanisms to just like have execution proposals participate in an auction or whatever, like just kind of stuff like this. But like it all converges towards like centralizing forces or like in one way or another, we can't really figure out a good like safe way to do it that way yet. So considering like an alternative of, okay, we can't have like a nice distribution across like a wide range of people actually participating and being execution proposals on APS. Maybe we can use like a delegate system to actually elect these people rather than having the market forces converge towards like a monopoly or an oligopoly. So yeah, just thought I would say that.
Sounds very interesting. That even the idea, and I don't want to hold the fellowship too much with my subjects. If I read the timing games paper, I think you guys had a big part of that, no? If I'm not mistaken. The one that's been published on Archives.
Yeah. So the main author of that paper was Caspar, but I helped when I joined, right after I joined, on mostly on the data part of things. But yes, that was an interesting timing games paper.
That means that theoretically a delegator could choose to delegate to validators that only work with block producers that do not censor or do not play timing games, if you would ever have such a rating system implemented.
Yeah, for sure. I think the value of having such a system is like it can be much more value aligned in a way. Like if we consider the Ethereum community or like staked like clients have values that are like non-censoring, um, diversity, and like maybe a kind of good distribution across many players and stuff, we can use like this delegate system to actually kind of enforce this rather than just relying on market forces that are, if we can handle like the centralization forces that come with it. So yes, I think that's the idea behind it.
Thank you. Sounds very interesting.
Hey, thank you guys. Dan likes to open with tough questions. I'd appreciate the answer. Anyone else? Folks, feel free to raise your hands. Bastin was first, so go ahead.
Hello, hi guys. So there is this web page called the RIG Open Problems. This is the link. Um, I understand what's the purpose, but is this updated? And because it doesn't seem like it is, and there seems to be something called the RIG Open Problems meetup, but that also I don't know if that happens or not. So, like, my question is, how do people get involved in the research process, and can people get involved, and if so, how? And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your question. So we have this rig open problems, which is meant for some problem statements that we maybe don't have time to tackle or somewhat outside of our field of expertise to involve other people in there. And it's also meant as a surface for people to create their own problems. So people that are interested in working with us are free to submit problems that could be facilitated via this system. So please don't feel constrained by just the problems that are listed on the website, because indeed we haven't been too active on this front. So I've created a new open problem somewhat recently around enshrined proposed ruler separation, which is RP 13. Which is the only one set as open currently on the screen. And then there are a bunch of closed ones or matched ones. In principle, we try to update this, but it's quite time consuming to write out like well specified problems. And this is actually, I think, quite a bit of the job of like applied research people, is specifying the problem so that other people can understand what actually the problems are. Yeah, so also feel free to submit your own problems. And then for the RP meetups, I would say that we had some of those earlier, but we haven't had them in a while. So potentially we could update the website to reflect that. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys. And by the way, I really appreciate that you have these open problems. I mean, Barnaby kind of created it as a response to EPF demands as well. So it's exactly works well for people to see what to work on here. Katya, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for coming. As I'm working on the implementation and testing part, I wonder what is the role of research on this testing stage? Do you follow your projects further or not? If you follow, what tools do you use normally? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say it's been a bit of a switch, conscious switch for Rig to go from like a more theoretical, maybe academic contribution to more often applied, kind of closer to the protocol approach. So it's shifting right now, and so it's a bit of like an early experimentation phase for us. But what we try to do is really kind of bring our research proposals to actual EIPs. Is like, I think that would be like kind of the good way of framing this, and then like work with core devs to have like specs ready, and then like eventually have like proof of concepts on like different clients and some implementation there. And then that's kind of to me at least, that's kind of where rig stops, or like where like research stops. Like once it's like in the hands of core devs, you don't like actively make research anymore, but you're still there to kind of collaborate with devs. So you kind of make sure like the problem, how you had it in mind, like is well implemented, or like you also end up usually having like research stuff that can't really be applied. So you have like feedback from devs, and you have to learn from this and try to adapt your proposal. And then it's a back and forth to like try to make it work so that the research you had in mind is still kind of valid, but with like the actual implementation constraints. And for the tools, I think there is not many tools we use. It's just like it's mostly written docs and HackMDs and Notion docs, and then GitHub repos and PRs, and that's I think about it. And for now, for me, it's been mostly like GitHub for the specs, and not much else. It's not very like code heavy, I would say. We leave you guys to do that job.
Yeah, thank you. I'm promoting Grafana dashboards. Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Do you have any more questions, folks? Feel free to raise your hand, speak up. Anyone? Otherwise, I will be forced to ask another question, so don't let me take it away from you. But okay, Katia, go ahead if you have another one. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have many questions. If no one has.
No worries.
Could you describe a portrait of researcher, like personal traits, skills? Because yeah, sometimes for some people it seems maybe boring or too hard. Or what skills do you need? What traits do you need as a researcher?
Okay, I can start to try, but I mean, yeah, I imagine the same question for a dev. It's very, very, very broad. I'd say if I had to name one thing, I would say curious. I feel like without that, you can't like really like keep pushing on research for too long, because like if you're not like always stimulated by like what's new, what's exciting, what you can learn, it's very hard to keep going in the research area, I feel. But other than this, it's just like as broad as the spectrum of people that exist on the planet. I think I don't think there is a big like stereotype or profile. Even in our research team, like whether you're talking to like an applied researcher or like a theoretical one, or from domain to domain, it varies a ton on what you might like or focus on. And then maybe just to address like the kind of difficulty part of things, I think it's just mostly jargon. Jargon, is that the word in English? Okay. Yeah, I think the barrier is there in every field. Like the people in a given field are like usually used to use words they feel are better to communicate within each other, because like they address like very well exactly what they want to talk about and very, very specific things. So that's, I think, a barrier of entry more than, but like, I mean, that's learnable. Like everything can be learned. You can just like spend a bit of time in one domain and you will start to speak the same language as other people. Feel like maybe it's a bit like some like transitioning from one language to another one in the code kind of world. But yeah, other than this, I wouldn't like be able to give a good like portrait of a stereotypical researcher.
What happens if for example, if your hypothesis fails? Do you feel like disappointed, or it's just like normal work?
Well, in academia, you usually feel disappointed because you spent 3 years working on this. So, and positive results are always a bit more better published than negative ones, which is a shame because I think we need more like negative results in papers generally. In Ethereum, it's really not a big deal just because, well, first of all, it happens a lot. And then the research is so fast paced that you just move on to another thing. Like it's not like you have spent years and years working on the exact same topic. So if like something doesn't work out, you just switch gears, work on something else, and it's not like as much as a mental load at all.
No time for regrets. Thank you.
I'm curious to hear. Maybe later words. I'm curious to hear your view, Tatya, or anyone else's on how research and development could interact, and if there are, for example, tools that would make this interaction better, because it's definitely something that we want to improve on.
Well, I'm working on PeerDAS, so I'm building the dashboards with metrics, which probably can be interesting for researchers, but on the testing phase. That's why I was asking, are you interested in the testing phase? So you can see the results, how it's going, and maybe you can find some space for improvements, for example, to find new topics for research. That's from my side.
Thanks, that's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I just want to chime in for the question Julian asked. Like in the start of the EPF, I really looked through the website, but most of the topics were already closed. So I think over there, and also when I was doing my master's, I was really looking for out from the industry like projects. So I think Ethereum could put out thesis topics and PhD topics out so that they can get academia to collaborate with them. Also, I think this point has been made like plenty of times in the Ethereum community already, but I think if all the information for a particular research is on one platform, I think it's much more easier to like the barrier that Thomas was speaking about. It lessens the effect of that barrier in general, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you. Bastian, do you have any question input?
Yes, I would like to agree with Chirag. Like I myself, like I'm looking for a master's thesis, and I'm really like I'm contacting the Ethereum researchers and trying to like find someone who. Well, this is a bit. It's not just collaboration. They have to agree to be your supervisor. It's a bit. You have some rules and stuff, but it would really be nice to be able to do your thesis as on Ethereum with the researchers. So I would like to really like agree on that. And also, yeah, one other thing that I like asked Mario a couple days ago, that is there some place where I can see what topics are being worked on by who? And well, he mentioned a lot of useful resources, but none of them was very like it wasn't indexed by topic and like who is working on what. So, for example, you got ETH research where like there are posts. You can look through posts, but it's not very straightforward to like find like a topic that you like and then like contact the researchers, and maybe some place that has like all the researchers and the topic that they're working on or the topics that they're working on. That would be good, because then you'll see what's happening right now with everyone, and then you know who to contact, or even you probably don't miss stuff that's happening and you really want to get into.
Yeah, agree with the sentiment for sure. I do think if research needs to be a bit more given a bit more credit than it is. Like I agree, it's not like perfect, but like if you really scroll through the posts and you like find a topic you like and you look at the authors and then you look at what they wrote and what they worked on, usually you can like pretty quickly like arrive to who is working on what. I feel like quite quickly. I mean, the UX is not perfect. I agree, but like I feel like if you really dig in and you get a good view of what everyone is working on, I feel. And then yeah, about like having like a place where like topics are updated and like who is working on what. I mean, it's a ton of work to update this, and it's probably just like that's the reason why it hasn't been done, because if you work on like all the time, you're going to spend like trying to update like everything you are working on in a like nice, comprehensible way for everyone to follow. Is going to be time you're not going to spend on research. So like there's a bit of a trade-off. I feel like yeah. My take is like we publish regularly enough on Eat Research that people can be quite familiar with what we are working on if they want to. I agree it's not the most digestible way to do it, but like I feel like at least it gives you a good idea. Maybe if we had someone completely dedicated to this, you know, to follow everyone's work and like actually put it in like a nice web page that everyone can follow and click on, it would be good. But I feel like it's like almost a full-time job, and even for me, it's hard sometimes to get clarity on exactly who on EF research is working on what, because you have to remember people move around a lot, like depending on topics and what they're interested in, or what they just heard or like someone asked them to work on. Like people are like quite multidisciplinary for most of them, so they can also like jump from a project to another, and it can be quite hard to keep track of everything.
Yeah, thanks for your inputs. Definitely very interesting. Just to add on to that, I think for our team, the rig, it's fairly legible as well. So I'll link our main website in the chat, and it's digested by topic. So like posts, and then who's working on that, or who posted a post, or papers and talks. So that should be quite digestible. But yeah, thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Yeah, like I think like generally Ethereum being open, you can just click through the PRs and see who does what, but especially the research doesn't use, GitHub or so on. Like sometimes it can be harder. Sometimes it happens that you're on the ETH research and you have like anon name there and can point it to the person, right? So yeah, it can take some looking. Dan, you have a question?
Quick high-level question. If possible, do you have a perceived timeline for fossil? I reckon EPBS first. No? And no? Or is not necessary?
No. I think those are very independent proposals. Both proposals are very interesting and very needed in their own way, but I don't think like there is any dependency between the two. And it's not my role to say when, because I can tell you like an EAP is coming very, very soon. I think that's like that's okay to say, but like whether like something will get accepted or whether people will want to include it in what fork is very much up to like a lot more people than than me or us. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, was just aiming for a high level, answer. Just what's your?
No, for sure. I think it should be included as fast as possible, but so does everyone that's working on a proposal. So we'll see.
Okay, awesome, guys. Do we have any more questions? We got 10 minutes left. So please use the time. Chirac.
Yeah, it's It's not a direct question per se. It's more of an opinion that I want to get a view on. So I was discussing this with Mario yesterday on the stand-up call as well. Like the general view of the Ethereum community against VPSs in general, like AWS and other things, has been that it's a centralization factor. But in countries like mine, like if I want a solo stake, I just cannot think about it. But if I do have a VPS, I do get access to like the high bandwidth that is required for running an Ethereum client. So in that sense, sometimes what most people see as a centralization vector can also be a decentralization vector. A lot of other countries can come in, and that could also attract a lot of other VPS providers to come in. So it's decentralization in that sense. In general, I think that something like EIP44s enables such VPSs to come on board, because right now there's either like high storage, low RAM and low CPU VPSs, or there's just like everything maxed out, which is super expensive for anyone in third world countries to go into in general. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I'm not sure if you guys have any comments. Like, definitely, like one of the also what Dan mentioned here, or we discussed the rainbow staking, the EODS approach is interesting for me that have people can run a different kind of node, some sort of light operators, and have access to some way of helping the protocol even under different requirements. Um, yeah, not sure if you folks any more comments, questions. Otherwise, I'll take one for myself. Katya, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder, because we're familiar with Spectra upgrades and upcoming upgrades, but I wonder, can you share us some research we don't even know yet, like which is not widely spread or widely known, like maybe you work for far future?
Well, it's hard because we are very transparent on everything we work on, to be honest. But I think some of the stuff might be like considered in the future is like, yes, allowing participants in the network to contribute to the network completely anonymously, so without revealing their identity at all. Right now we had a small ROP, by the way, on trying to geolocate validators, and it was very easy, at least for some of them, to get their IP address and where they were at. Of course, it can be kind of obfuscated a bit with VPNs and stuff, but like still, it's very transparent right now, where validators and nodes are and who is running them, which is, I mean, it's nice in a way, but like could be bad eventually in the future. So I think some of the research around finding cryptographic ways or like smart ways to obfuscate who sends what to the protocol and how they contribute to it is cool research that might gain some traction, not only on Ethereum but like in most blockchain applications.
So you mean privacy for validators, yes, for their stakes?
Exactly, like not privacy for the content of transactions or whatever, but like privacy for who contributes to the network. So they can't be, they can express their preferences and do whatever they want without being accounted for.
To add on to that, so I think we are indeed usually very transparent about what we do. Like everything that we do is published on the website. So some stuff that you might not know about is usually just because they're either very small ideas or maybe just not as impactful. On the other hand, there's some stuff that we want to focus on more in the future, which is mainly execution layer things. Well, not mainly, but it's like a new topic for us. So Barnaby has done some work on transaction fee mechanisms for example, account abstraction. He calls this embedded fee markets. I think this is kind of interesting. It's not clear if this will ever come to the protocol, but it's at least something that's related to protocol, so it should be thought about. So how do people, for example, share costs, and how should the protocol pass these on so that users still have a good experience of just knowing how much they value their transaction and getting those on chain, like in 1559. But this becomes more difficult if transaction fees become more complicated. So yeah, that's a research direction that's maybe not so well known.
So probably we will have lower fees, right?
So transaction fee mechanisms are not related to the level of fees. It's just about user experience.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just wanted to reiterate, Thomas, the privacy of validators is very important. Like that's also very cool. Because I've always been saying like that we will have better censorship resistance with proof of stake, because instead of like a huge fucking container, you have a little validator somewhere. But there are also other trade-offs on the privacy. So with improvements on that, like could be very private and also like help with the overall censorship resistance. Folks, do you have anything else? Otherwise, I might have some last questions.
Sorry, just follow up. Is it like for security reasons, or why do we need privacy?
For security reasons, or just like, imagine you want to express preferences and include transactions in the blockchain, and you are contributing to this, but these transactions might be considered by someone else as like, I don't know, censorable or not compliant or something like this. Then we want some way that people can participate in the network without being targeted or flagged as, you are the one that included these transactions or stuff like this. So I think it's mostly around censorship resistance for me. I do think if people can express their preferences without being identified, they can express them more freely. And so that's kind of part of the idea behind the mechanism.
Like the security as well, like the secret slot leader election is important, because when you know the next validator and you can find his IP address, you can DDoS him. You could potentially just skip blocks. So that's also one thing. But yeah, generally, like to be able to resist the capture, right? Like the government can come and see that we can prove that your validator here signs these Tornado Cash transactions or something. Like you don't want that. So even without a big container full of miners, you still might have a problem. Before we finish, guys, we have last few minutes. I just wanted to ask for some general advice for our fellows here. What maybe something that like you would like to know a few years ago when you've been diving into Ethereum research, and for the people who are now working on starting to work in the R&D and spending their first few months on the projects, like what would you do you have any advice, anything they should know?
For me, it would be probably start by working on something you feel is very, very important. It's always easier to start that way, and then kind of the motivation keeps going even when it's like sometimes a bit confusing or hard to understand. Like if you feel like you're working for something you really like or you think is important, I feel like it's probably like a good way to start things. Like instead of like trying to find like, I don't know, the project that fits the most with what you do or what I feel like, I think it needs to be a big driver in what you do, and like I do feel like Ethereum is a good place for this. Like if you can be driven by some values or some things you feel are important and try to work on this, and it's always nice. And then try to talk to as many people as you can. people are in the community, like in the EF, but also like in the Ethereum community, I feel like quite accessible and reachable and quite ready to help. So in general, like just like if you're interested on anything you want to work on and are nice and just reach out to people and want to help, like usually you'll get like positive responses, or maybe you'll get redirected to someone that is more relevant for what you want to do. But like yeah, take the opportunity. Like I feel like as an EPF fellow, you have like already a role kind of in the community. So it's a very good like way to open a lot of doors. You can just be, hey, I'm an EPF fellow. Like everyone will probably have in mind what it means. So it's very easy for you to just reach out to people and get in touch with them, or like like if you're interested in anything they're working on.
Yeah, I don't want to extend the call too much, but I completely agree with Tomas said. And I think if you're interested in research, it could be valuable to be very precise. So when going through the research posts or whatever, there are usually a lot of open questions that are either implied in the text or referred to. And being very precise about these could be very useful if you're reaching out to people.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it. And yeah, as you can see, we are at a full hour, so we gotta wrap it up here. But again, really appreciate you joining us today. I think we learned a lot, get inspired. So thank you so much for your time. And again, thank you so much for all the great work you do. It's really, really amazing to see the research from Rick. So yeah, keep it up, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so
And
much.
maybe you're coming to DEF CON. We will have the whole EPF day there. Most of the fellows will be there, so yeah, hope we can meet you there.
Nice. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Bye
Have a great
everyone.
day.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye everyone.